Chapter 4, Doctors Murdered My Brother. I have to keep reminding myself that I have witnesses. That policeman, if he's still alive, is a lot younger than me. All those people in the coffee shop, they were all younger than me. For those naysayers that don't believe that there's another dimension, afterlife, you're not my problem. You're your problem. I don't know exactly what their limitations are, but again, he said, doctors murdered my brother. And then he, in a soft voice, he was in severe emotional pain to share the story with me. Because of his guilt, he researched and he found out the truth. His brother had begged him for help and he didn't believe him. He left him in the hands of doctors. And yes, the doctors murdered his brother. They did the same thing to him that they did to me. They put him in the hospital against his wishes, illegally incarcerated him, used him like a guinea pig, left him with Benadryl, and he begged for help, but nobody would listen. After he had decided to research in the United States and found out the truth about what killed his brother, he began to pray that God would send him someone to help. If he could not save his brother, he could just save one other person. He would not feel so sick about not helping his brother. His guilt was ruining his life. He was on duty driving his car in Mississauga when his brother came to him in a similar vision as mine, much the same. His brother hovered over the hood of his car and directed him exactly where to drive and led him directly to me in that donut shop. That's just the truth. That's what really happened. And I have witnesses. See, I don't care if you believe me or not. I'm not doing it for those of you who don't believe me. I'm doing it to save children like me and save people like his brother. I sometimes wonder why his brother never contacted me after to find out if I was okay or keep in touch with me to see if I was successful. I don't know. If he's alive, I think he should have. It would have been nice. Because as much as he helped me, I still felt really abandoned. I used the policeman's phone, or was it the phone? No, I think it was the phone in the coffee shop. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I called Tom and he picked me up and drove me back to my cabin. He was forced to leave me for work, and he gave me Dan's gas mask so I could breathe. But I was left to die in a shack with no help and no idea how I was going to research this disease. I would then discover that I was not alone. I had the entire district of Barrie, Wasaga Beach, Collingwood, Midland, Penetang, and all of Georgian Bay came to my rescue. A military man took many photos to document what I was going through. He firmly believed my story was worth publishing. For 3 years, children rescued me. This is Timmy, my hero. When I got discouraged, they reminded me why I was doing it. It was to save them and their children someday. Timmy especially was my hero. He cut and piled wood for me and helped me every day to the outhouse washroom. It was 45 feet away from the shack, and I couldn't get there by myself. Every day before and after school, the children would gather round me, hugging me and telling me how much they loved me. Even though I was terminal and crippled, in agonizing pain, the children made it bearable. And I worked hard to get the story published because of those wonderful children. Then in 1988, that's little Jason. I think that's him here. When he was 8 years old, he's the one who said, "I'd give you one of my legs if I could. I love you, Trudi, but my legs are too small." I always remember that. He made dying pleasurable, if you can imagine what it feels like to have all those children gather around you and care about you. Dr. Dean tried to help me. She heard about me. Elizabeth found her. She used her own money, about $500, and sent my blood to a clinic in California, in a blood lab, and it was diagnosed that I had dangerously low T and B cell function, and that I was immune deficient. And then she went on TVO. Whoa, that was a mistake. She then became besieged by our medical association, those bloody SOBs, monsters. The mere fact that she tried to help me and people like me, they started to audit her books. They put her under siege. She didn't know what to do. And she called me. She was terrified. Because when I warned her that this could happen, she didn't believe me. She was a doctor. She didn't believe me that we were that corrupt. I told her, "Look, I wish you well. Get the hell out of Canada. Go to New York where you'll be able to help people." Because New York was very advanced, more so than California. There was a Mount Sasha, I think, and there was a whole hundreds of people, chemically hypersensitive, living out in the wilderness there. One of the journalists with the tabloid in Florida, I think it was the Sun, but anyway, or the Examiner, I forget which one, he said to me they'd done a number of stories, and he sent me some copies of them. And it was amazing. There was an island off the coast of South Africa where people were living who were allergic to the planet like me. And he just kept in touch with me, and he kept trying to do an article on me, which I think eventually he did. But he was limited in how much he could do. And what made it interesting is that I was living in a gas mask, and he called me the amazing bubble woman. And that was certainly true. I had to sleep in the gas mask. I took it off only to talk to the children, but I had to stay in it constantly. I just couldn't breathe. And the fire department helped me too. If somebody started to build a fire anywhere near the shack, they came and they put a stop to it and explained how sick I was. And the police all tried to help me. And then one of the American scientists contacted me. He was in Collingwood on a reconnaissance mission of some kind. A great big machine was going, they were looking at fault lines or something. But we had a long talk about the poisoning, and as a scientist, he agreed with me. He said, "You're right. People are being poisoned. There's no question about it." And he gave me a list of people to contact in the United States, which I did, and they were all wonderful. They all sent me information for free. I had no problem with that. American agencies and government agencies, NIOSH, Department of Chemical Hazards, EPA, you name it, they were all great. Didn't help me, but I just kept digging in the research, using different detox methods. And then the MSA people were really wonderful. Through phoning and different companies that had gas mask equipment. MSA in Pittsburgh was the best, and they sent me the mask I was really happiest about. It was just, I mean, it was just wonderful. The Wilson was horrible. It kept me alive, but it really was toxic. It was rubber, and this is silicone, and it was an activated charcoal, and it was really wonderful. And I was so happy with it that I had to shop in it and everything, and I was really proud of it. I certainly was not the least bit ashamed. But I tried to get an apartment, but that was short-lived. I kept winding up back on the shack again because every time I got an apartment, I'd get poisoned. Stupid cleaning fluids and pesticide sprays and whatever. We had a bunch of bugs, and they went spraying all over the place, and so I wound up back in the shack. And then in 1988, I like this photo. This was the one that Lawrence took. Made in Canada, he said. He said, mutations are being bred, made in Canada. He found a way to help me have a little bit of humor about my situation. And that's me going to the outhouse. And then I became terminal again. I don't know what caused it, of course. And MSA sent me up the bubble gas mask. And because I needed to walk the streets and I needed to be visible. And people were very leery of talking to somebody in a gas mask when they couldn't see your face. But because the bubble gas mask could see me, it made it a lot easier. And that really helped me a lot. It did get me some media publicity. The owner of the Safety Supply Depot and factory workers and mechanics and people from all walks of life started to support my cause to research all diseases caused by chemicals. And then in 1988, I had a really, I changed my name a couple of times, okay, because I was just so sick, and people were so mean to me in Sudbury. So I had changed my name to Marie for a while. It didn't really help, but in Collingwood, they did a wonderful, very large write-up. And by now I had discovered in 1775 that there was any disease caused by chemicals was known as cheminosis. So I tried to get publicity that in 1775, the Royal Society of Scientists were well aware that we were being poisoned. And then I got an article in the Sudbury media. Whoa, that was a mistake. It was terrible. I had left Sudbury because of my mother's insistence. Wasaga Beach because of my mother's insistence. And it was awful. I should never have left. I had thousands of people from every walk of life supporting me in my cause to research my disease. And tragically, I was just never able to abandon my mother, nor could I stop myself from doing what she wanted. So again, she manipulated me to move back to Sudbury. And in 1989, I lived in a village in Chelmsford, 15 minutes by car northwest of Sudbury. And it's west of the smokestack and was supposed to be cleaner in the environment. And I thought that might help. And researching the area nearby, I tried to find clean air where I could walk safely without a gas mask and cross-country ski. I was willing to do anything to get well. I tried rollerblading with a walker. You name it, I tried it. I did have by now a diet for disease control through the research with Americans that was helping hundreds of people, everyone but me. And I could not understand what was causing the attacks. Each time I had to flush, detox, and purge myself to get to my feet. Every time I ate, I passed out and I'd get sick. And I was, as far as I knew, everything I was eating was clean. After so much effort, I had a brief recovery. Tom, Dan, Glenn became my dance partners, and I danced 5 days a week. It was glorious. I was now very active in AA, and Al Anon and Sister Bonnie and Adult Children of Alcoholics helped me the most. The Sudbury Media, I have no copy. There was a lovely photo by Jim Brown, but the editor refused to give me one. My mother had severely damaged my ability to make sane decisions or protect myself from being abused. She kept me in manipulation relationships with not just men but women as well. Sister Bonnie quickly realized that the word love was warped by my mother insisting that men that raped me was because they loved me so much. Sister Bonnie advised me to not use the word love in my mind, but ask myself, is this person caring? Do they care about me? Are they helping me be well? Are they making me happy? By deleting the word love and transferring the word caring, I was able to start seeing how all my clients in Toronto, the executives from New York, Elizabeth Taylor, John Wayne, all these people actually cared about me, but that my family and so-called friends did not. With Dan and Tom's help, they protected me from my mother's insanity as much as they could. Sister Bonnie explained to me that because my mother was in reality really my child, it would always be difficult for me to cut her loose and abandon her. I have wonderful memories of that time. I gave talks in the jails, including the children's jail. They call it by another name, but if children are incarcerated with bars in the window with armed guards, then to me that's a jail. One 9-year-old boy was a drug pusher. He was impressed by my story that I had been a successful businesswoman. He said he could make $1,000 a week and wanted to know what kind of a career he could do to make that kind of money. I laughed, saying, "You'd better get yourself educated in sales. Car salesmen can make twice that without the risk of going to jail. There are legal ways to make millions a year, like real estate, for instance." I told him the stock market as well, but that I personally did not like stocks and bonds. It's too risky. I'll never know what happened to him, but he promised me that he was going to go straight and he was going to become a big salesman and make money. I left feeling really good about that meeting. So I had a number of moments like that, or an hour, or a day, or even a couple of days. But then suddenly I was struck down as if hit by lightning. Once more, I could not reverse the attack and had no idea why. I needed media publicity to survive. I called asking advice of an executive with the MSA, the manufacturer of the world's best gas mask equipment, and he sent me that bubble gas mask so I could walk the streets and be seen. I regret not having a copy of the Northern Life article because Jim Brown did a really good job on it. I couldn't get any more help from Sudbury Media. In my father's eyes, if I was not making money, I was not worth keeping alive. Nick Upchan was that kind of sadistic monster. I found out later he'd contacted her telling her a pack of lies to sabotage me, and I have not had any support from this newspaper ever since. Perhaps if someone besides me had written on my behalf, perhaps if someone besides me had called the editor, but no one ever did. That's the difference between Northern Ontario and the Georgian Bay District. They all graduated out of the same education system, but somehow they never learned that by helping each other, you help yourself. No, that article in Sudbury, instead of helping me, got me shot at. Smoke bombs put outside my bedroom window so I could not get fresh air at night. The woman downstairs was deliberately putting smoke into my apartment, knowing I was allergic. I got phone calls from women threatening to having me killed, screaming at me that I was trying to shut down the mines and put their men out of work. And I screamed back, "You stupid bitch. I am trying to save their lives from disease by being poisoned and get them better gas mask equipment. Can't you read?" F you, and I slammed the phone down. I was under siege, and nothing I said made any difference. The article was very clear and said nothing of what they accused me of, but that's Canada for you. Canadians can be that ignorant, especially Sudbury. The sewer hole of the planet is what I used to call it. I was so angry. Then, to my surprise, Chris Hedrick, Examiner. Yeah, he's the one who was helping me. He did get an article for me. The Amazing Bubble Woman. She is drowning in a sea of chemicals. Well, what a difference. What a difference. You know, it still blows my mind when I think of the difference. January 24th, 1989, the American tabloid from Florida, the Examiner, did the article, The Amazing Bubble Woman. What a difference. I suddenly got phone calls from men all over the USA wanting to marry me and take care of me and get me out of Canada. One was especially nice, a retired military man living in Vermont. Oh God, when I think of the mountains in Vermont and the skiing I could have done, and he had a beautiful home up in the mountains somewhere, I was so tempted. But then I got a call from New York. It was an executive. He read the article, and he knew of a drug that he believed would, if not cure it, would surely control my disease. The name of the drug was Obitrol. Now, this man claimed to be a biochemist and very familiar with my disease and chemical hypersensitivities. However, the patent had expired, and he was not sure I could get any unless by someone on the black market. Then I get a call from California. A man familiar with the drug also said he could get it for me on the black market for $40,000. He said he knew. I said, well, okay, I know someone who has that kind of money and is willing to help me. That won't be a problem. But arranging to fly me to New York took some doing. In my bubble gas mask, I had to be carried onto the plane, and the staff all had to be explained to the passengers who I was and what I was, and why I was going to New York was to get help for my disease, that I was terminally ill. And I had a copy of a shorter version of the article made like a flyer and handed out to everyone so they would understand that I was for real. And I was carried off the plane in my bubble gas mask equipment and carried into the Park Plaza Hotel, where the staff were prepared for me. They had cleaned the room thoroughly. 3 days later, the man arrived from California and gave me 6 pills. Before I had a chance to recover, he jumped me, raped me, went insane, then left, disappearing with my research. Well, too sick to care, I took 1 pill and waited to see what would happen. 30 minutes later, I leapt out of bed and I could dance. Or was it 2.5 hours? Might have been 2.5 hours. I'm not sure. But anyway, it wasn't very long. I think it was just a half an hour. Anyway, it had been worth it. Everything I had been through made it worth it. It proved it was in the brain, which I had suspected since I was 7 years old. Don't ask me why. It proved that it could be reversed and controlled. I didn't know if it could be cured. But all of my theories, it proved it. Now, I had this little flyer of the article and I was passing it around to everybody. And surprisingly enough, in 1989 in New York City, thank God there was no social media, I became really famous for many, many miles around. So for the next 5 days, it would make a great movie in itself. I met a neurologist who gave me the name of my disease. He was so happy to meet me. He'd heard about me. He called me, or I called him. But anyway, I was at the Henry Hudson Hotel, and he was at a hospital within a block away, very close. And He was wonderful. The other surprise was I could eat without getting sick. Oh, what a joy. I went everywhere, to the Greek restaurant, to the Jamaican restaurant. I went to a very famous Jewish restaurant and I had corned beef sandwich. I had steak. I had, you name it, I had it. I was eating like 3 meals a day. I'm surprised I didn't gain 50 pounds. And because I was running out of money, I had to move from the Park Plaza to the Henry Hudson Hotel. And they were thrilled to have me. I mean, I don't know how to describe to anyone what it felt like, how they felt to be a part of my recovery. Here I was dying, and look at me, deaf to dancing. That's exactly what happened. And I not only felt wonderful, I looked 20 years younger. I was beautiful. I mean, I was absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, that's me sick, spending most of my time in bed or on the sofa. And that's me in New York. Unbelievable. But I arrived in the bubble gas mask, don't forget. Oh, yeah, I was fabulous. I mean, I look at myself, I can't believe it's me. The neurologist suggested I don't use the word cheminosis anymore and change it to Parkinsonism. He gave me a copy of the Mosby Medical Dictionary in which there was it stated Parkinsonism, a disease caused by chemicals, and he gave me all kinds of suggestions on how I should try to get legal rights for Parkinsonism in Canada. Then I met with an FBI agent who suggested that I send what I had to them, saying they wouldn't do anything, but they never throw anything out either, and my story and the research will always be on file. Well, I didn't have much of a story to send them, and my research was really, really bad. So I also sent it to the Washington Post. And Mrs. Graham was still alive at the time, and she did keep it. And when she died, they shipped it all back to me. And I have to say, it really, it really was a certain amount of gibberish because I was in no condition to write. Like I said, I could I could reverse the brain damage, but I couldn't bring back the memory that I had when I was 40 with 100% memory recall. And I was very talented as a writer. My ads were amazing. I used to get people from by the plane load. When I put an ad in the paper, I had a plane load of people come in from Hong Kong and all over the world. I mean, I was really talented. But anyway, c'est la vie. At this point, I didn't care about anything. The staff at the hotel were so thrilled to witness my recovery, they arranged for a special dance for me at the Park Plaza Hotel Disco. Several men, each one proficient in a particular dance: salsa, lambada, tango, waltz, jitterbug jive, polka, rock and roll jive, you name it. They each took turns with me on the dance floor. And I was surrounded and protected by armed guards to an audience of about 300 or more. And I danced like I never danced before. I was never out of breath. I mean, that one little pill, think about it. All those years and that one little pill did it. The problem is that the biochemist who told me about it, he said it's not a solution. He thinks it'll work, but it's not a solution because it's extremely addictive and people become very psychotic if they stay on it too long. But anyway, I wasn't going to think about that right then and there. I was just so happy. It was a dream come true, and that dream, I can go back in my memory and it's me and I'm gorgeous and I'm dancing and I get a standing ovation and I was beautiful once more. Then a wealthy lawyer wanted to help me get published and put me up at his expense in his executive suite. Oh yes, once more I turned down the opportunity of a lifetime because of my mother. She began sobbing and begging and weeping for me to come back to Chelmsford. Well, I did. I came home. If you call it that, it's not really a home. It's a nightmare. First thing I wanted to do was I arranged with Tom, and my mother wanted to come along. That I had a couple of pills left. I think I had one left because that one pill lasted 2.5 months on that one pill, and then I got poisoned by diesel fumes that were invading my apartment. Yeah, like I was still under siege. It wasn't safe for me to come back to Sudbury. I should have never done that. But anyway, I went with Tom and my mother, and we went right under the smokestack, and I took an attack, and they got me to a nearby restaurant. We had gone to the restaurant to explain that I was going to test something, and I took a half a pill, and 30 minutes later it pulled me out of it. But then I was still on welfare, and the government staff refused me disability. And when you are on welfare, you don't have the right to move out of an area or that city. On disability, it covers all of the province of Ontario, and you can live anywhere in that province. So I wrote to our Premier Bill Davis begging for help because the people kept poisoning me in that apartment. And I knew I had to get out of the area. I now remembered, Bob, what he told me to do and stay out of Sudbury and stay away from my mother. Well, I knew I'd never be able to stay away from her, but I knew that I had to get out of Sudbury. But anyway, what a shock. Premier Bill Davis actually called me direct and spoke to me for quite a while and explained from now on to use a pen name. He helped me find one. I chose Trudi Trahan-Upchan. And that's all over the internet now, and it's online, it's on Facebook, and anytime you're interested, you can look it up. And I said, but gee whiz, that's awfully close to my real name. And he said, oh, people are stupid. Don't worry about it. He said, I promise you it'll work. And it did. Never had a death threat since. He contacted the welfare supervisor, gave him a blast, and had me immediately put on disability. He specifically asked me, have you lived anywhere where you have not been abused? And the answer was easy. Yes, Wasaga Beach in Collingwood. Okay, he said, that is where you moved to. And he arranged for me to have money to travel. Tom loaded up my car, as well as his. And don't forget, no matter how sick I am, I've always been able to drive quite safely. It's just the one part of my brain that functions. So he followed me as we both drove temporarily back to the shack and the children who loved me. I had no trouble getting another article in the Collingwood paper, only this time people responded with offers to help. And I got calls from dozens of victims that I was able to help. One was a child whose life I saved. One was a man whose marriage I saved. I gave a talk at our military base. Yeah, that was quite an experience at the military base. I told the general, I said, listen, I'm not going to mince with the words. If you want me to give a talk, I'll be glad to do it. But I'm going to tell the truth. And he said, that's what I want. Trudy, he said, you go for it. So I looked at their gas mask equipment and I said, men, your equipment is worse now than what we had in the Second World War. Yeah, can you believe that? That's just the day before I left. Dan took me dancing and I left Chelmsford. This is me down in Wasaga Beach. Yeah, that's how I wanted a record of how gorgeous I am. Now the photographer cheated me. I paid him to give me the negatives. And I even went to the police. I was so upset. And the police chief was also upset. Gave him a blast of shit. Said, do you realize that this woman is doing everything nonprofit and the work she's doing to help get gas mask equipment for the firemen and the people in the factories, and you're robbing her, you're cheating her, you've lied to her? Well, hope he's burning in hell. But I managed to scramble and take a few together, And even though he claims copyrights, phooey on him. It's my body, and I paid him a lot of money. And these are my pictures. Just because he took them, he doesn't own the rights to them. He's a cheater and a liar and a crook. So anyway, I then said to the military, that's me trying to learn to ski in Collingwood. And I explained to them that their gas mask equipment wasn't even as good as the First World War. And I told them, go to any museum and take a look. The filter that they had in 1990 for our military was so small it was the size of a bottle cap. And that was supposed to save them from chemical warfare? Unbelievable. It was so bad, I got so upset that I called Virginia. Virginia is the head of the military, an American military office. And I reported them how bad the situation was in 1990. And sometime later, not too long later, they sent up 3 lawyers to help, which never got any media support. It was announced on a private channel on television that called CPAC, but national media didn't pick up on it at all. But they did try really hard, and eventually they did get better military gas mask equipment. And I campaigned for the men in the factories, which was so successful, the Collingwood local supplier called me thanking me. His business was booming, and whether they knew it or not, thousands of men working in toxic environments were getting their lives saved by the MSA gas mask equipment, thanks to me. 1990, a wealthy man in Collingwood moved me out of the shack into a tiny apartment by the beach so I could walk in clean air, swing on the swings, and even in summer get outside without getting sick. And I looked gorgeous. I could dance, ski, both cross country and downhill. My diet was once more vegetarian, and I was in paradise. I had thousands of people supporting me in my cause to get proper diagnosis and treatment for being poisoned. Living in Collingwood was wonderful. I thrived for a while, but climbing stairs still remained difficult. 1996, I moved into a beach apartment where I was poisoned from too much to list, winding me back into the shack 3 years and paying for an apartment I could not live in. 1995, after being poisoned on canola oil hidden in my food, getting that vision on OKRA, and I began to have a full recovery, able to relearn. One day at a time, I sat down with the dictionary to relearn the meaning of words. I bought a very large synonym dictionary so that I could understand the various meanings of words. And then I took a course, correspondence course, with an American agency in Cincinnati to learn how to make sentences again. 1998, Collingwood did a wonderful article on OKRA, saving my life. That's just a few pictures of me rollerblading with a walker. Children loved it. I made an outfit that was that outrageous because I wanted to be sure that nobody would run me over by accident. So the kids would all toot the horns and say, "Hey, Trudy, you're brighter than Big Bird." It was fun. That was the one thing I actually got to grow at the shack. It was a sunflower. Yeah, see, even if I was sick, and that's me on my tricycle. Oh God, I was so happy on that tricycle. I would bike 2.5 kilometers, or is it 2 miles? I'm not sure. I get mixed up. But whatever it was, to Zares, and get my groceries and bike back. And I was starting to get my legs really good. I was doing so good. Yeah, I was doing so good. Yeah, OKRA really worked. It was amazing what OKRA did for me. That's the outfit I wore to go all over town and show people, make sure they remembered me, what OKRA did for me. This was the article in the Enterprise Bulletin, November 21st, 1998. Fabulous article. Why didn't that make national media? I don't know. It should have, but it didn't. Somewhere along the line, I kept getting poisoned and I started to go down. OKRA kept me alive. It reversed the attacks, but it didn't cure me. My brain damage was too far gone for anything to cure me. But why did I keep getting poisoned? I had a beautiful gas mask. I now had all this research. I knew it was toxic. I don't know. I just didn't know how. It had to be something in my food. Or maybe I was getting sick on whatever they fed the animal or whatever. I don't know. I really, to this day, I just keep asking myself. Anyway, my father had finally passed away, and I knew things weren't right with my mother, but she would never tell you the truth, you know. She was pretty psychotic. 1994, my beautiful Tom died. This was in loving memory of him. I put out a little press release saying that Canada is ignoring deadly disease. Now, the Sudbury Star did publish an article, but it didn't get me any results. But I kept trying. So here I am, crippled and sick again. Don't know why. And I was up visiting my mother, and I went to a dance. A friend took me to a dance out in a little village, and a farmer, one of those things, you know, it's like he took one look at me, and he came over to me, and he said, "Do you want to get some fresh air?" And I said, he sensed that I wasn't feeling well. So we went outside, and he said, "I know you're not well, but I think I can help you." Well, it turned out he was a Métis, and by gee, he did. I knew, because I knew something was wrong with my mother, and you know, a 4-hour drive to rescue her. I'd been just back and forth since so many decades already. I knew I had to come back. I couldn't abandon her. I wish I could have, to tell you the truth, because she really was insane. And if I had stayed in Wasaga Beach, I think I might have handled things differently. I would have kept my support, and I might have still been able to help my mother, because I had all kinds of legal help there, and they weren't all crooks. They were doing it for free, not like Sudbury. But anyway, that's hindsight. When he offered to move me to his farm, I said, "Well, I'm going to have to move to Sudbury anyway," but I said, "I'll go on the farm for a while." And I put as much as I could in storage. I had 6 glorious months, and he really did get me well. And his dog was in love with me, and I'm not going to go into detail about my time there. It's too painful. It was too beautiful, and I had to lose it again. He took a mini stroke and tried to kill me. I know he doesn't remember what he did, but he choked and killed to death my cat. And he threatened to shoot the dog. So I fled for my life with the help of Huguette, a wonderful woman. And my own cousin Teresa turned on me, trying to kill me. She's a schizophrenic. But for 2 years, I hadn't seen any sign of her being a violent schizophrenic. I had had a number of friendships with people that had mental illness. and I'm not one to turn my back on them. But I endured a never-ending nightmare with my mother and fraud and our home and title rights stolen, and frankly lost over $300,000. Yeah, that's my favorite picture of me dancing outside because of that farmer. But he never came back. He never remembered me. We were never friends after that. In fact, he hated me. So back to Sudbury to rescue my mother, to lose all support. Back to Sudbury and its filthy pollution. And I had a vision that something was really wrong. And I was right. 2 months after I moved back to Sudbury, she took a seizure in my arms from drugs the doctor gave her. And I used my research and OKRA. And it took me 6 months, but I brought her back to 100% health. And there she is, and she was gorgeous. She was gorgeous. And I gave my mother another 11 years, wonderful years, because of coming back. So on that, I'm not sorry. And often I would just go wandering, feeling so abandoned. I tried so hard to get my research published and my story published, and nobody would help me. I just couldn't get anybody to help me. So this is not really great. And I know that it's not really great. But it's the best that I can do with my limitations. And I'm going to end it here because I don't want to go over the limit. It'll cut out. So the next chapter will be losing over $1 million in our estate because of the laws in Canada. And that's what happened to me next. I just didn't get any breaks.